Now let's take a look at a second way to implement access control using a grant system. So go ahead and jump back to your module directory, and let's go ahead and open up step 9, which is called Implementing Node Access Using Grants. Go ahead and copy the entire code and paste it into your stuff.module file, overwriting everything that's there. Now, in this version of the file, we've removed the hook user access that we used in our previous example, and we've replaced it with the grant system hooks. Implementing the grant system requires two hooks: hook node grants, which we have here, and hook node access records, which we have here. Now, the concept of grants might be a little tricky to wrap your mind around at first. But the idea is that there are realms, and realms are just individual criteria that are checked to see if a user has access to a particular node. So we would have one realm for our module where we're checking the username of the user that's set as the backup user. That would be considered a realm. But we might have another realm for checking to see if the user is a new user that's been created in the last week, and if so, they can access particular content. So we can add a number of grants through a number of realms and allow very granular access to various nodes for different criteria. There are two steps to the process, and thus the two hooks. The first is to add the grant to the grant table. And if we jump to our database editor here, you'll see in the node access table, this is the structure of the table. We have the node ID, the GID, which is the unique ID that's set for this grant, for this realm. And if, when we're checking grants, the ID that we're checking against matches this GID, then they get a pass. The realm is the name of the realm, and we can grant them view, update, or delete access for a node. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the editor. So whenever a node is added or updated in the database, the hook node access records hooks will run, and any items here that are added to the grants array are added to the node access table in the database. So we're starting off by taking a look at our node object and making sure that stuff backup user is assigned. If not, we don't want to add any grants. But if so, then we're going to initiate our grants array, and then we're going to add a new grant to it. We're going to name the realm stuff backup user, and just like with any namespacing in Drupal, we want to prefix this with the name of our module. We're setting the GID to the user ID. And the reason for this is that GID is an integer in the table, in the database. And so we need to convert our username that we're saving to a user ID. So here's how we're doing that. We're taking the stuff backup user username, and we're passing that as an array to a function called user load by name. And this allows us just to pass a name to this function and return a user object. Then we're taking that object and grabbing the UID from it. So this GID will be assigned the UID of the user that's assigned to the stuff backup user. Okay, so the idea is then that when we do our checks for access control, we're going to check against this GID, and we're going to check to see if the user ID of the current user is the same as this GID. And then we're giving them full access to view, update, and delete the item. And we're passing a priority, which will prioritize this grant above any other grants. And then we're returning that grant array. So this was the first side where we set up the criteria required for certain access permissions for a particular node. But the next step is to actually check those permissions for a user when they go to perform a particular operation, either view, update, or delete on the node. So that's why we have this hook node grants here, which we're calling stuff node grants. And this takes two parameters. The first is the account that's performing the operation, the user account, and the second is the operation name. So we're just checking for the update status. So we're going to look for update, and then we go to check the grants table, and we do this by constructing an array of grants, and the structure is the key is the name of the realm, and the value is the value that we're going to check against what we set as the GID in the grants table. So this is going to be the UID of the current user, which we're checking against the UID of the backup user. And then we can add additional grants here if we wanted to do multiple checks. Same with hook node access records. We could add as many grants as we wanted to here. And then we're returning this grants array. And this is what will be run on every node operation to check to see if the current user has permission. So let's go ahead and save this. And from here, we have to do two things in order to get our grant to register. First, we have to clear our caches in order to get our hook node access records to run. And then we need to save our node, which will save the particular grant for that particular node. So I'm going to jump to our secondary browser here, where I've loaded node/50/edit just to demonstrate that we don't have access to this page after we remove the hook user access from the previous example. Now I'm going to jump back to our main browser, where I'm an administrator, and let's go ahead and clear all the caches. And then the next step is editing the node, where we're granting access and saving it. We've already set our backup user to user 2, and we just need to save the node to get that to register. Okay, now I'm going to jump back to the secondary browser where I'm logged in as user 2, and I'm going to refresh the page. Now we see the edit form. So our grant has registered, our specific grant for this node was registered, and now we're good to go. And anytime we change that backup user, the grant system will change to adjust to allow only that new user access to this node. Okay, so we just looked at two ways of controlling access in a very granular fashion per node, per user.